Okay, so this is going to be the first in a series of videos, what to do with Unity. This is the very first day, and so if you've never used Unity before, that's fine. If you have, maybe you'll learn some tricks. I'm going to try to keep all these videos short, 5 to 10 minutes, and I've got about 10 or 12 of them I want to try to get through. So hopefully you stick with me. This is the first one. So fire up Unity. You can download it. It is free. This is version 2018.1. I think 2018.2 is coming out soon. But these are all going to be, pretty much the same. And I got a bunch of other videos on my YouTube channel, and they pretty much apply to this version of Unity as well, even if they were done on some of the earlier ones. But anyways, let's get going here. If it's your first time using Unity, it's going to ask you to make an account. They don't bother you with stuff, so go ahead and make one. You can use a real email. And it's good to have a real email because later on you might actually use it for some of their asset store stuff that they have, but we'll talk about all of that later. So once you have your account and you get logged in here, I've got stuff here you probably won't. These are just some other projects that I had opened up on this computer. So I'm just going to click new. And this series is all going to be 2D. So we're going to, over here on template, we're going to click 2D. Make sure we do that. This is going to be Unity 2018 001. And I'm going to call it just images. We're going to talk about images today. So that's what this video is, bringing images in and checking it out. How do we do that inside of Unity? I'm going to give my thing a different name here. You can call it whatever you want. I'm turning off analytics. I don't know what it does. This question mark over here probably tells us, but that's fine. So project name, call it whatever you want. I'm calling it this, and it's where I'm storing it all, and I'm going to hit create project. And hopefully it'll pop up here in a second. Hold on. Screen probably looks a little weird because I got OBS here, but maybe I'll just minimize it. Why not? And hopefully soon this thing will finish. And then we will be good to go to start our first project. Now, I am going to use some graphics. I guess while it's loading up, I can talk about that. I have a bunch of PNGs that I'm going to use. These I got all these from a game called Glitch, and they public domained all of their assets. So if you search around, you can find the game Glitch right here, Glitch, and all of its assets. And if you want to use anything, any PNG or JPEG or any of that kind of stuff is going to be fine for what we're doing. So it really doesn't matter, but this is what I'm going to use because they're free and they're available to everybody. So you can check those out. So Unity did show up here, so I can go around and explain to you all of the different sections. Again, this video is sort of assuming you've never used Unity before. What we've got right here in the center, these are our different views of our project. Right now it's empty. I'm going to scroll in and out with my scroll wheel on my mouse. And you can see as I scroll out, I start to see this white rectangle, and this is our camera. So this is the things that we're going to see when we actually play our game or run our scene. Anything within this white rectangle we'll see. Stuff on the outside we won't see. There's a couple tabs up here. Game tab, this is what we see when we run the game. And asset stores where we can purchase different types of assets for our games or even get them for free. We're not going to worry about that one too much. So we'll go back to game tab. This is what we would see if we actually ran our game. It's just blue. There's nothing there. This is our scene. This is where we're going to put stuff. Over on the left, these are things that are actually in your scene. So right now our scene only has a main camera. And there it is. And then down here, this is an area where you're going to drag in files and stuff that you want to use in your scene. You'll put them down in this area. And if you have any object over here in your scene selected, you'll look over here and all the properties for that will be here. We can change these whenever we want to. For right now, we'll just leave them alone. Actually, let's change one property of the camera. I don't like this blue color. To me, it's a fine shade of blue. However, games that use this and projects that people are using that still have this in it, it immediately tells me it's a lack of effort that you haven't changed it. So we're going to change it. So with main camera selected, and you come over here to the properties, here's the background color. So I can just click on this blue. I'm going to get a color wheel, and I can just change it to whatever I want, maybe something, I don't know, like this. And now that color has changed, and when I look on my game tab, it's changed as well. So that is something that you can quickly change with properties to sort of get familiar with how to change properties of objects. Up here, I think you can see my mouse, but I'll start clicking so you can see these different things that I'm clicking on. These are the different ways you can interact with Unity. So this hand that I've got selected right now, what do they call it? Hand tool. That's nice. Is going to move around where we are looking at in our scene. It's not really making any changes. It's just changing what we're seeing in the screen here. The crosshairs allow us to scale and move things around. This thing is rotation. This is the scale tool, and you can see how these things are changing as we do that. This one kind of does everything, a Rect tool, and this move, rotate, or scale sort of does everything too, all in one thing. So I'm going to leave it on this one. I think this is the default, and as we go through, I may select different things, but I'll try to make a point to say which ones of these I am selecting. But let's get going. Let's start to build something, because I think right now building something is where you start to learn how to use this. I can sit here and babble on all about these menus and different things, and it won't make any sense until we do something. So I'm going to bring in a couple images that we're going to place into our scene here. So I'm going to go back to my glitch PNG, and I am just going to look through all of these different things. Here's a nice looking little tent thing, and some rocks for the background, and there's maybe some nicer rocks covered in snow. And again, any kind of picture that you have is going to be fine. Here, glacier, make a snow background, that works. And then maybe I'll find a couple other things that we want to use. I don't know, this guy looks nice. And maybe some signs. Okay, so it doesn't matter what you have, as long as you have some images here, that's going to work. And I'm going to put this, actually I'll put this one up here. I'll just drag it in. So all I did was drag it from here and up into here. And if you are not able to do that, you may not have chosen 2D defaults at the beginning of your project. So if you look here, this 2D is depressed, and I can click it and move into 3D space. You don't really want to do that. The reason I'm pointing that out right now is that if yours isn't pressed by default, that means that you started your scene up in 3D defaults, and that's okay, but it's going to be a lot harder to follow these examples if you're not in 2D mode. So if this isn't pressed in, I would just close your project, open a brand new one, and make sure you select 2D at that very first screen. Okay, so now that this thing is in here, we dragged it in. It showed up in our hierarchy over here on the left. And if I look at my game tab, this is what we would see if we run it. There it is. Remember, we changed our background color of our camera to this weird kind of peachy yellow whitish color. And we can actually run this. If I hit this go button up here, these are our controls. If I hit go, it's going to play, and this is our game or our scene actually running. It's not doing anything because all we have is this thing in it, but that's it. We've got our first one up and going. I'm going to click over to OBS and make sure we're still going. Yep, we are still going. 8 minutes. Oh my gosh, this is supposed to be 5. Okay, so one thing that we can do, now look over here, I've got, up at the top, I've got this thing selected here, this Rect tool, and this is going to allow me to just kind of grab and scale this thing. And I'm scaling it way kind of out of whack to just give us a big background. And I'm zooming now with the scroll wheel. So that our white rectangle that we can't really see anymore, I mean, I can see it, I don't know if it's picking it up or not, that's our camera. And I scaled this mountain to cover the whole thing. So now if I hit play, this is our background. It's sort of a zoomed in version of that thing. And that's fine. It just looks some kind of texture better than the other thing. So now we can start to place some objects in our scene. Put this guy in here. And you can see the outline of our camera if I just drag it around. I probably should have clicked on a different background image, but that's fine. So if I put my little guy in here, and then we hit play, and there he is. Awesome. He's a little large for what I want, so I'm going to shrink him down. Play again. And perfect. And remember, we can click over to the Game View tab too, just by clicking these two different tabs. So there's our little guy. Back into Scene View. And remember, when I hit play, when I'm done checking it out, I'm hitting play again to get out of it. Pause will kind of pause things, but you you don't really want to use pause unless you know what you're doing. You really want to hit this play button that just kind of resets everything back. The problem is if you're doing this play pause kind of thing and you make changes and then you unplay it, all those changes get undone. So it's always better to hit that play button one more time and get back to this. All right, so we're gonna put our sign up here. There it is. Okay, now I hit play. Where'd it go? I don't know. Let's see, is this gonna work? There it is, yeah. So I was just kind of checking to make sure what the problem was. I'm glad this happened because it really does demonstrate a good thing that we have to keep in mind. So I dragged this sign into our scene and we can't see it anymore. And the reason is there's this concept of layering. So we can give each of these objects in our scene a layer number, and the higher the number, the closer it is to the camera. So it sort of gives it a depth. By default, everything comes in as 0. So if we look at our background right here, I've got it selected. We look at the properties. The order and layer is a 0. We look at our little guy. The order and layer is a 0. And then we look at our sign, and the order and layer is also a 0. And so when they're all the same number, which one gets drawn first? It's hard to tell, and it actually changes from time to time. So if you have everything set up with the same order and layer, and you think everything's great, and you save your project, and then you come back the next day and things are disappearing, it's because it's rendering in a different sequence. So it's really important to be very specific about your order and layer. So we're going to set our background. We'll leave it at 0 because it'll be way in the back. Our little guy here, I'm going to bring him to the forefront, so I'm going to change it to a 10. So he'll always be in front of the mountain no matter what. And this sign, I'm going to make it a 5. So what we've got is the mountain at a 0, the sign at a 5, and this guy at a 10. So now I'm just going to kind of make this thing a little bit bigger and move it over. Now if we hit play, everything is fine. And then if I move my little guy, it's always going to be in front of that sign, right? Because he's got an order and layer of a 10, this is a 5, and the background is a 0. So remember to always specifically do that. I've had people who build really, really nice things, and somehow it all worked out perfectly. Everything with an order layer of 0. They save it, everything's great, and then they come back to work on it the next day, and everything's gone because everything is an order and layer of 0. There's a chance that this mountaintop might be the last thing drawn, and in that case, it looks like all of your work is gone because it's all hidden back behind this thing. But it's not, and so all we have to do is really go back and reset all these orders and layers. So that is really an important thing to do. And other things that we look at as far as properties go. So if I have my sign selected here and my Rect tool up here in the top, Rect tool, it allows me to do this kind of thing, which is scaling it. And if you notice over here in properties, these boxes, as I'm scaling this, the scale is changing. And so if you want to just change some of these scales by yourself without dragging these things around, you can. So if you just need to nudge it just a little bit, you can hover your mouse. I'm here in the scale section. I'm hovering my mouse over X, and I click on the X, and I can drag it to the left or the right, and I can, kind of fine-tune this a little bit. Or on the Y, make it go up and down. Same with position. I can do this. Or click on Y and drag it up and down. The other thing with positioning that's useful is if I click on the crosshair, I'm back up here in the upper left, and I click on these crosshairs, the move tool, what that allows me to do is very easily lock this into one axis. So if I just want to move this thing up and down, I can click on this arrow and drag it up. So it's not going to move left and right. If you can see my mouse cursor, it's going around in circles, but this thing is just going up and down because I grabbed on that up arrow. And same with the right, the horizontal. I can move it, right and left by doing circles, but it's not going to move up and down. And that's because I've got this tool, this crosshairs move tool selected. And if I go to the Rect tool, I can move this thing around just by clicking and dragging, and that's perfectly fine too. It's whatever works best for you. You can move by doing over here in the position in the upper right, like this, or Y, or just clicking and dragging, or getting these crosshair tools. Whatever is the best way for you to work, and whatever project that you're working on is the one to use. Um, and that's it. I mean, in 2D, I do a lot of this kind of thing of using this Rect Tool, dragging around, and then positioning how I need to. In 3D, I use almost this thing exclusively because it's a little bit stranger to work in 3D. So it just depends on what you're doing. So I think that's what I wanted to do for the first one. Oh, one more thing. How do we save all this? Well, I can say File, Save Project, File, Save Scenes. All right, and that gave me everything is saved now. So save project, save scenes, and you are good to go. Sometimes people forget where they saved things, and so Unity's got a really cool thing. If you click down here anywhere in your asset window and you just right click on it, you can say Show in Explorer. And on the Mac, you can say Show in Finder. Same thing, right click on it and go up to this menu item. And it's going to pop open an Explorer window that gives you the full path, or on the Mac, it'll give you a Finder window that tells you where all your project is. And so then you know if you need to save some of this stuff off or move it to a flash drive or zip it up or whatever you want to do. This is where everything is. This project 001, this is our whole project. This is everything that we would need. So that's another hot tip. And I think that's all I wanted to do for this one. Let's just get some images on the screen, and we did that.